Well, good afternoon to everybody who is in the room, attending, organizing, being a part of the Enugu Business Summit, and all those who are watching online. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fela. I'd like to be sure that you can hear me clearly. If Reverend Guchime will give me a thumbs up if you can hear me clearly. Can you hear me clearly? All right. Okay, so let me start by really once again thanking Reverend Guchime for inviting me, and to all those who have organized the Enugu Business Summit. I say a huge congratulations to you all, and to everybody who's attending today. I think I am so excited on your behalf, because I know that you are already going to be very different. In other words, the information you've gotten from this business summit will do a lot in helping you to see differently, think differently, and act differently. And those are the three most important things about being different. It's the way you see things, it's the way you do things, and it's the way you respond to things. And you know, Reverend Chime has just asked me a very important question, and I think everybody's literally saying, look, with all of the things that are going on now, the kind of business environment that we find, with all the challenges that are happening within our business environment, whether it's the key issues we're dealing with nationally or even globally, you know, insecurity, you know, the Naira is losing you know, a lot of value. There's hyperinflation everywhere. Fela, how can anybody be thinking? I mean, there's literally no power. I mean, we've been in my office, we run permanently on generator. And then, of course, whether it's the diesel, I mean, the price of diesel has gone up easily at least 3 times, okay? And you're thinking to yourself, how can you be talking about exponential, not just growth, but exponential growth at such a time as this? And the first thing that I would like you to understand is that exponential growth is possible. Please write that down. Growth is possible. Exponential growth is possible. And I'll be happy to even share my own story, because in one way or the other, even our business has been able to experience exponential growth in this time and this season, in spite of all of the things that are going on. So I'll tell you a little bit of a very quick story around this. You know, I mean, as many people know, and as I was introduced, I'm an executive coach, I'm a business consultant, and I can remember when we were transitioning into the year 2020, how excited the whole world was. I mean, I think the fact that we were coming into a new decade meant that many people were willing. I mean, many of our clients wanted to have a new strategy, a new way of how we're going to leverage all the business opportunities and make the most of this new decade. Everybody was so excited. 2020, in fact, all over the world, and especially in Nigeria, you know, we like to christen things. 2020 is my year of amazing growth, my year of expansion, my year of enlargement, and people were saying, I'm not sure if anybody can remember. Can I see anybody? I know I can see through the hands. Can I see anybody's hand there? If you were one of those who said 2020, my year of let me see your hand if you don't mind. You know, and then all of a sudden, just as people were getting so excited about this new decade, this new year, we started to hear sometime in the middle of January around a particular outbreak of a disease that was coming out of China. And well, it wasn't the first time any form of a disease or a mini pandemic. We had heard about SARS before then. We had heard about H1N1. You know, we've heard about different kinds of, but this one was slightly different, because this one, it seemed like they were talking about it and they were saying, hey, this thing is likely to spread. Cut the long story short, COVID hit the world and the world changed. And for the first time in our lifetime, nations went on lockdown. People couldn't travel, flights were canceled. Before we knew it, countries were literally asking people to stay at home. And then, you know what happened? The numbers of cases started to rise. And then the number of deaths started to rise. And all of a sudden, we started looking at and hearing those numbers, and it was going from just people that, you know, numbers to, we started hearing about names, and maybe some of us didn't even know those names initially. And then after sometimes we started to realize that they became closer and closer and closer. And then soon after, we started even to hear about loved ones at different levels that were being lost to this COVID pandemic. That wasn't really just all of it. It was also the fact that with the lockdown, economic activities slowed down. Before the 2020 pandemic, I, as a business consultant, my job was helping business leaders achieve exponential growth, especially by attaining clarity in their understanding of what their business is, by bringing their teams into alignment around a common strategy, and then developing plans of actions, engaging their people, you know, inspiring them to be able to execute and deliver outstanding results. That's basically what I did. I've been doing that for 29 years. I mean, some of my clients are people who, for instance, at one time in 1 year had like a balance sheet size of 20 billion. And the next year they wanted to do 40 billion. And the people said, no, we can't do 40 billion. We came in, we helped them. The same people who said it was impossible to do 40 billion, double their balance sheet in 1 year. In 10 months from when we started and we engaged with those clients, they had made 48 billion. The people who thought it was impossible. Another one of our clients, the CEO was retiring after 15 years. And he had wanted that organization to be able to declare a 1 billion naira profit before tax. And, you know, 8.5 months into his final tenure and the final year, you know, they had just received their last management report, and they had only done 300 million profit before tax. And somebody said, go and get Fela Durotoye. And by the time we finished working with that organization, 3.5 months later, they declared 1.126 billion. That means that before we joined them and started working with them, 8.5 months, they did 300 million profit before tax. But within 3.5 months of us working with them, they were able to do 800 million profit before tax. And together, they closed the year at 1.126. That's my job. My job is to help business leaders understand how to be able to release the capacity of their people to come into new business areas, new product lines, new ways of doing things, so that they can experience a portion of business growth that they've never had before. Usually it will take a new thinking to be able to make it happen. But to cut the long story short, in doing what I do, normally I would have to go and sit with an organization, you know, sit down with their management team, do retreats with them, do trainings for them, do strategic work for them, you know, surveys, different kinds of things. I was always traveling. Somebody asked me one day, said, you know, Fela, where do you live? I said, well, my family lives in Lagos. I live in the air. That's what I said to him. Because every time, and then coupled with the fact that, you know, a lot of people tend to be able to listen to me, and, you know, especially on the public front, I'm very, you know, in 2019 alone, I think I must have had about 1,200 speaking engagements, speaking invitations. So I was always traveling. Cut the long story short, by the time COVID hit, the first thing that happened was that all my clients shut down. They themselves could not meet. Their staff were at home. Now, in the course of doing this, we had just started building what we were going to have as the most ultra-modern leadership training center in Lagos. And we were hoping that it would be in Nigeria at least. It was going to be a top class leadership training center right in the heart of the Lekki area, along the expressway. It was going, and we had invested quite a few millions, got into about 65% of our project execution, our building, when COVID hit. And now it meant that, number one, work had to stop on our leadership training center. Number two, all our clients could no longer continue the different projects we were doing with them, which meant that we had no cash flow. Number three, I had to be at home. Luckily, I was able to get my children also back home in time, just before we were completely locked down. My staff were all scattered in their homes, all of them on lockdown. And literally, the world had changed for me. And I remember two things that happened that really got to me was when we realized at one point in time that this pandemic happens once every 100 years. And that the last pandemic that happened in 1918. And that, essentially, in 1918, they didn't come out of that pandemic until 1921, which was 3 years. So in my head, I thought, you mean 3 years without an income? 3 years, how am I going to pay salaries? How am I going to maintain my family? How am I, the world had changed for us. And I remember something happening that was really very important, Reverend Chime, that I thought I remember going to pray. Because every time that I realize that I have a problem, my approach is to deal with it in 3 ways: spirit, soul, and body. And I'm advising anybody who's listening to me now. Whatever the challenge is, deal with it in the fullness of your being. We are tri-beings, tri-union beings. Just like there's the God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. We are spirit, soul, and body. And every problem you will deal with, you have to deal with spiritually, you have to deal with it mentally, emotionally, and then you have to deal with physically. And so I had gone to just to set myself in a retreat. And in that retreat, I was literally just pleading with God. I said, Lord, show me the light at the end of the tunnel. Show me the light at the end of the tunnel. And after about 3 days of praying, I heard God speak to me with clarity. And he said to me, my son, stop looking for light at the end of the tunnel. He said, ignite the light in your heart and you will see your way out and you will lead many others out with you. If you've ever heard of one thing that you heard something that changed your life completely, that was the thing. That was the moment for me. I mean, this was almost like a month into the COVID pandemic. He said, stop looking for light at the end of the tunnel. Ignite the light in your heart and you will see your way out of this. So, cut the long story short, I started to ask myself, what is the thing I need to do? I said, stop worrying about yourself and how you will pay salaries and how you will. He said, start thinking of who can I help and how can I help? I want everyone who can, please write those 2 questions down. Who can I help and how can I help? Who can I help and how can I help? Of course, the first thing was I knew I could help my clients. So I was calling all my clients, how are you doing? What's going on? How can I help you? And all my clients started to say, Fela, I'm totally confused right now. I don't know what to do. Everybody in my organization is looking up to me, my management team, they're asking me, what's the way forward? Where are we going? I don't know. I am confused. So I had to think of how am I going to be able to I can hear you on the phone. We were doing some of the WhatsApp video calls, but soon I realized we needed to have a better way to relate. And this thing called Zoom seemed to have been everywhere. You are hearing about Zoom meeting, well, log in, installing the app, watch. I said, okay, can we have a Zoom meeting? And before I knew it, I started to have a chat with people that before COVID, I would either go to their offices, or they will come to my office, or they will come to my home. We will lay out, food. We will do everything. We realized, listen, we didn't have time for all those things. We needed to get straight to the point. Cut the long story short. Boom. We were having these meetings online. And they were 1-hour meetings. And by the time we're done, they will say to me, oh my God, Fela, God, thank you so much. I'm really grateful. This is amazing. And then they will go, I'll come back to you, Fela. And then they will go and have a conversation with their management team. Before I knew it, they started saying, okay, look, why don't we see whether we can have a conversation? Let's bring in all the other guys. And Fela, maybe we can talk to us about how to be able to, what kind of strategy, and before we knew it, all of a sudden, I was now busier than I had ever been, touching as many of my clients, and then people were calling each other and saying, call Fela Durotoye. In fact, at some point of time, some, women were calling Matara and saying, my husband is almost losing his mind. He's sitting at home. He's embarrassed by the fact that he's run out of cash. I don't know, can your husband say anything to him? Can you? I don't know. I just think he needs, before we knew it, we decided, okay, let's pull together a men's meeting, right? Where we can talk to all the men about how to deal with the challenges that we are going through. Before we could say Jack Robinson, we had our first online meeting. And people were paying as little as, I think at that time was 20,000 naira. And before we knew it, we had maybe about 200 people there. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing, I'm in my house and I'm hearing ching, ching, ching on my phone. Just alerts dropping, ching, 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 ching. Ladies and gentlemen, that was how I started to my online business. Before I knew it, started to have clients from the US, UK, Canada, mostly started as Nigerians, all across. Before we knew it, Africans were calling, Fela, please, can we have some time with you? We realized, oh my God, we need to create a real product around this. Once we had a product around this, we had a payment system that was working. Before we knew it, people were calling, scheduling meetings. Business coaching was the second part of what I used to do. Consulting was what I used to do mostly. But now I realized I was coaching people from all across the world. All of a sudden, now I started having people in Australia. I started having people in Asia. I started having people all over the world. When we would run a training program, people will join from all across the world, sometimes 200 people from all across the world. And they were paying online. What has happened? All of a sudden, I realized that just by somehow doing things differently, our business literally started to grow like this. I'm only sharing my own experience. I didn't plan to go online at the beginning of 2020. It wasn't my strategy. My strategy was to build a top-class leadership training institute. Nobody, CEOs were not coming for any, nobody even wanted to sit in another room with other people with masks on their face all day or risk, being caught, catching COVID. Ladies and gentlemen, since 2020, after COVID, 100% of all the revenue that we've made has come from online. 100% since 2020. I have not made 1 naira, $1 by being there, having physical to physical person contact. On a daily basis, I have the privilege of now running coaching programs that many times I have 2 to 3 CEOs from all across the world. Many years ago, when I was going to go to somewhere like Harvard or Yale, I would travel 2 weeks, leave everything I was doing, sit in class. All of a sudden, I went to University of California, Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute. It was done online. And so I realized that simply by seeing differently, thinking differently, and acting differently, We had been able to change the way that we did things. And now the world had opened up to us. Can I also quickly say that 80% of my revenue comes from outside Nigeria? So I sit in my office or in my home, and much of the value that I create is consumed by people that are not affected by the problems that are surrounding me. And this is one of the things that I wanted you to quickly understand as I bring this initial, just because Reverend Chime said, with all that is going on, how can you even dare to think? Please remember, the world has changed. And what technology has allowed us to do is to be able to break down boundaries and barriers that right there, you are now seeing the working together of what we call hybrid value opportunities, things that you can do in person, physical contact to contact, but more importantly, the things you can do online. When Reverend Chime asked me if I was going to be able to come, unfortunately, my calendar could not allow me to even close down one day to fly to Enugu. Totally choked up. I wish I could have been there, but when he asked me, I said, listen, it's impossible. I can't, there are too many commitments I've made to be able to come down, but I will be able to connect online and share online. And we talked about having something that is called the global edition, online edition. And so basically what I'm saying here is this. You know, the opposite of different is same, but the gap between different and same is called change. And if you can dare to change the way you think, to change the way you see things, you'll be amazed how much opportunity there is for growth. Every time there is difficulty, please remember, it means that there are a set of people who have need for something that you can do very well. It's now your job to say, who can I help and how can I help? Thinking differently may mean sometimes a different set of customers from the ones that you have always been serving. You have to be open. Like I said to you, 80% of my customers today are outside Nigeria, meaning they are not the people I was serving 2 years ago. 100% of my revenue comes from online, meaning before it was me going to here and I will speak here and I will do this retreat here and I will do that. Most of my clients today, I'm serving them online. It also means that when you're going to be different, it means sometimes you have to you may not only have, sometimes the different customers, your customers may have different needs. Previously, it was only strategy. But when COVID hit, a lot of people had a need for total kind of coaching, executive coaching, where it now had to do with not just how well is my business going to do, but how well am I able to do as a man, as a woman, as a person, as a professional, as a husband, as a wife, as a father, as a mother. The entirety, the fact that all of a sudden the lines between office and home had now changed. Many CEOs, many business leaders, many people are working from home. It meant that their needs were changing. And once their needs were changing, it meant that we may need to have different products to meet those needs. So in daring to be different and leading the change that leads to being different, like I said, you may need to be open to what new customers or what existing customers do we have? But more importantly, what new needs do those customers have? What new products can we create? We didn't have anything like men's locker room a year ago, but all of a sudden, men's locker room showed up. because it was a need for men. But guess what? Before I knew it, the women started saying, Fela, is it only the men you are there for? Are you not also my coach? Are you not also my mentor? Okay, calm down. Then we decided to have women's powder room. That's a new product. And then you may also need to look at what channels am I using to deliver value to my customer. Technology is one of the greatest difference makers today. And you may have to use your phone for more than going on Facebook or on Instagram. You may realize that the new world is online. That if you have products now, Instagram has become your shopping mall. And your store is now on Instagram. That gone were the days when it was just about slaying. But that now the ability to be able to get people to know what you stand for, the ability to get people to reach you from all across the world is possible with this thing called technology. And with technology, you may need to be able to do things differently. And if you leverage that, you'll be able to access different people across. But that also means that you may need to have different skill sets. I didn't know how to go, I did a few, but very few Sky calls and Sky meetings. Most of the time, if I had a coaching program in the US, it would be that I would fly to the US. If I had to speak at a conference in the UK, I would fly to the UK. If I had to, that was what happened. I had to learn how to be able to, develop my ability to speak in a room when the people that I'm speaking to are not physically there. I had to go on a 3-day Zoom training program. I paid, I think it was something like 30 or 60,000 naira to learn how to use Zoom. And then make sure that my team had to learn it also. With new skill sets came new tools. So all of a sudden, now I had to start thinking of how to get lights. If I show you some of the things, look, this is one of my lights here. I've got 5 lights that are shining on me right now, 5. I had to learn how to be able to get a Zoom cam. I had to learn how to get different kinds of mics. I needed new tools to be able to get my work done. And guess what? I also realized that the work we needed now needed a different set of people. And some of the people that were working with us before, we realized that they didn't have the skill sets that we needed. And we needed to hire a different set of people. Because we had new things that we were doing, new ways of working. So now we only work in the office 2 days a week, on Tuesdays and on Thursdays. And we only do it just only for team bonding, because our guys work even more effectively when they work from home. But that meant that we had to now start thinking of how to invest in making it comfortable for them to work from home, making sure each person had a laptop, making sure a person had a modem, internet modem, making sure that they had lights to be able to connect, making sure, and so my point is this: growth is possible if you're willing to see differently, think differently, and act differently. In every difficulty, there is opportunity. And so if you're just going to be able to do that, let me quickly give you these 3 V's that I believe are going to be very important for anyone who's going to lead in a time as what we have today. If you want to lead effectively for growth, number 1, you must have a vision of the growth that you have, that you want. In other words, you must see clearly the possibilities of growing. And one of the ways that I always say to people is, there is nothing new under the sun, the Bible said to us. Sometimes you catch a vision by looking at people who have gone ahead of you. Sometimes you can hear something and say, it's true. If Fela can do it, now I can see it. Now that becomes a vision. One of the things that we've done over the last 6 months or thereabout is to have a program that helps people see the end of 2022 and plan a 2022 outcome from December 2021. That program is called Prestige. And I coach people on how to create the future that they desire so that they are able to have a vision that is powerful, that inspires them. So if you want to lead, you must have a vision. It is your vision that creates the light at the end of your tunnel that will lead you out. The second thing that you must be able to do is you must be clear about the value that you bring. Let me be clear. Let me say it well. The world has no place for takers anymore. You know those takers, people who are there, they want to go to work because they want to get a salary. They want to do business because they want to make money. The world has no place for takers anymore. The world only has place for givers, people who can create value, people who can make things better, people who can help other people. That's where the world is now. So it's one thing for you to have an idea of what you want the future to look like, but it's more important to ask yourself, who can I help and how can I help? And then, so there's vision, there is value, and then the last one is you must be clear about your values. And I would insist that you please have a set of globally accepted values. I'm going to say that again. If you're going to play on the global stage, you can't think the way that you're thinking now. You've got to think differently. Gone are the days that you will say, oh, Shebi is we. We are supposed to start a meeting at 4 o'clock. Then you get there and say, sorry, it was traffic. And we are starting at 4:15. When you are online, there's no room for those kind of conversations. 4 p.m. is 4 p.m. And many times, even now to these days, when you are running a meeting, you have to say things like good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are across the world. Because on one meeting, you are dealing with somebody who is in Australia or New Zealand, and I have clients in those places who are there, and they are literally 11 hours ahead of us. So they are maybe in morning at the time when you are in the evening here in West Africa. And yet you also have people in Canada or in the US who are 6 hours behind. So when you say good morning, you're talking to the guys in Australia. When you say good afternoon, you're talking to the guys in the US. When you say good evening, you're talking to the guys in the UK and in Nigeria and in Africa. You know, the world has changed. But let me be clear. There are certain values that work across the entire earth. Number one, exemplary. In other words, if you are someone who is somebody that can be worthy of being copied, boom. Number two, expertise. The ability to be an expert at something, not just a generalist that can talk about everything. Number three, execution. The ability to get things done and keep your promises. Number four, excellence. The ability to do things so well that it has nothing to do with where it is you are doing it from. When we started all our training programs, it usually was only Nigerians that were joining us, because maybe some of them would be the ones that know Fela Durotoye. Over time, now started realizing that some of these people now, South Africans were joining. Then somewhere, all across Africa, before we knew it, Americans were joining. I'm not talking about Nigerian Americans or Nigerians living in America. I'm talking about people of different tribes, different races joining. Why? Because we were delivering excellence at world-class level. You may be living in Enugu, but you are of the world. Let me put it that way. You are of the world. You've got to have the capacity to serve the world with excellence at the world-class level, even if you are living in Enugu. Even if you're living in Lagos, even if you're living in Port Harcourt, even if you're living in Uyo, wherever you are living, it doesn't matter. You can serve the world. And then the last value that I want to share with you today is excitement. Guys, it's tough already dealing with all the issues that people are dealing with. And let me be clear, it's not only in Nigeria that business is so tough. I mean, today we talk about the VUCA world. VUCA, V-U-C-A, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The kind of challenges people are dealing with. Prices rising in the prices of energy, or it's happening all across the world. The impact of Russia's invasion on Ukraine having multiple levels of dynamics. So it's a complex world out there. People need excitement. They need a happy place. Therefore, whatever it is that you are doing, you have to have the capacity to be able to make people happy. So now today, when we're running training programs or we're running leadership programs or we're running things online, retreats, now we are doing breathing exercises, yoga online. We do yoga. We do dancing online, passing the baton from one person. Anybody that is doing whatever the move that the person is doing, all 200 people must do it. Why? Because the world needs excitement. It's not enough for you to be excellent at what you do. You must make it fun. Gone were the days when every time I was going on, we had to knot a tie and stay like this. Oh, speak with power. Now you have to be free. You have to be open. You have to be, because the world needs excitement. The world has no place for boring. The world has no place for people without passion. People need to see your excitement. They need to feel your excitement. They need to be excited to do business with you. Only when people are excited by their encounters with you can they remember you. When they can remember you for good, then you have gone from what we call striving business to thriving business. What's a striving business? Any business that must struggle to get the next customer, that's a striving business. It's a struggling business. What's a thriving business? Any business that knows how to attract the next customer. A striving business is always pursuing after customers. A thriving business is always attracting customers. The next transaction, you must be able to lead your team in a way that they operate at such a high level of excellence, that they observe global standards, that they deliver on the promises that they make. Because listen, remember when you took, then technology opened the boundaries for you, it also opened the borders for your competitors. So now more Nigerians are able to have, executive coaches outside the world. Now more Nigerians are able to have, advisors, consultants, all across the world. So what is going to make Fela stand out is going to be that I can operate at any level. What's going to make you stand out? It's going to be because you can operate at the highest level. So I want you to please remember, the world has changed. The world has changed. And you must learn how to not only change with the world, but ask yourself, how can I lead the change that the world is going into? Ask yourself those two questions that saved my soul. Who can I help? And how can I help? Think about it. Who are the people there who have needs that I have the ability to meet? What products can I develop to be able to meet those needs? It's not about just selling the products I've always known how to sell. What new ways can I use technology to reach those people? What new channels can I develop? What new skills do I need to learn and acquire? What new tools do I need to save to buy? What new team of people do I need to connect with so that we can deliver the promise and the value that we have? To dare to be different means to dare to see differently. to dare to think differently, and to dare to act differently. And when you do these three things, you will lead for exponential growth in any environment. Please remember, every time the sun sets somewhere, the sun rises somewhere else. I want you to remember this thing Fela Durotoye said, every night is a morning somewhere. Every time the naira loses value, the dollar gains value, the pound gains value. The question is not about whether the naira is losing value. The question is, how are you earning in pounds and dollars? How are you able to serve people who it is now better for them to serve or to buy from you, because a little bit of dollar will do so much of what you want in naira. A real estate agent, a real estate company that we help, we were helping them to think differently. Because they said, oh, FD, oh, it's so difficult now. People are not able to buy, our customers. I said, so tell me, where are your new customers? Every time, oh, you say people are, people don't have money in Nigeria. There's so much inflation. People don't have disposable income to buy. I said, if Nigerians here don't have, who are the people that have? They started thinking, what do you mean? Then they started realizing, when it gets difficult for Nigerians to buy land in Nigeria, it is easier for Nigerians in diaspora to buy land in Nigeria. Oh my God. So how are you positioning yourself for Nigerians in diaspora? By doing that, their business exploded. Remember, every time the sun sets somewhere, the sun rises somewhere else. There is always opportunity. Scarcity is an illusion. The earth is the Lord's. Is means it never changes, but that's not all. And the fullness thereof. The earth is always full. Don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. There is always opportunity. But you must think differently. You must see differently. And you must act differently. It is possible to grow in this time. Thank you, Reverend Chine.
Copen Group, building lives and structures.